Welcome back, everybody, to the She Sells, He Sells podcast, where we are here to change the way you think about sales by teaching you to look at it in a whole new way. Today, we've got a She Sells message that Krista will lead. So, Krista, do you want to fill us in on your She Sells message today?
Yes. So today's She Sells message is the idea that stories should lead over specs. And when I say specs, I specifically mean specifications, specifically in holiday selling time.
Which we are rapidly approaching here.
Yes.
So say more. Tell me more about what you're talking about here.
Yes. So I was actually thinking about this because I'm going to start with a story because we have a little Demcher secret that we're about to bring out into the open. And this is the Demcher Guess Who list. So Guess Who, an old game in the, I don't know.
It's not that old. Is
It's
it?
pretty old. I think the 80s.
Yeah, but it wasn't like 50.
No, but I mean,
Yeah,
the 80s is
okay.
old, Brian.
It's
The
not
80s
old.
is 40.
20 years ago.
80s
You
are
always start with the even number. So it's even 2000 minus 80, 20.
Oh, got it.
That's how it works.
Okay. All right. Got
All
it. So the 80s or 90s, Guess Who? So Guess Who is, I'm just going to describe it in case there's any young people that don't know.
Any Zennials, is that a word?
I think so.
All right.
So it's a board and it has people, like characters that flip up.
Yeah, like
Help me out
there's
here.
like 30 or so characters on a little board. They're on these like flippable paddles.
Yeah.
So it starts with all of the characters
All the
up.
characters are flipped up, and both people have the board, and one person is describing one. There's one character that you are describing to the other person, and so the other person has to say, "Is this character a male or a female?"
Yeah.
And
Are they wearing a hat?
yes, and
Right.
so you're basically process of elimination, trying to whittle it down to get that person to guess the right character. So we've kind of created our own Guess Who board, although we've never put these people on a Guess Who board, but we've just run into all sort of characters in our life that we find interesting. And so we have a shared notes app that we all have on our phone of characters out and about in the wild. I think this started maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and we continue to add these characters. They range from a waiter that waited on us at one like sports bar we went to. His name will remain anonymous, just in case.
He could be a listener.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Yes. But this actually came to me because Ava just texted and said she had randomly found him, came across him on Instagram. Long story how she found him. But I showed him to Bennett and I was like, "Do you know who this is?" And he immediately knew who he was. And he just had a very big, larger than life personality. And we just loved him. And we were like, he's going on the Guess Who board. And then there was sometimes there are groups of people. So then there is this, we can share this one publicly. There was a Snapchat, I think it was a Snapchat group chat of our niece.
I see what you're doing here. Yeah, I don't know the details if this was like Snapchat or like a text thread. I don't know what the details.
It was a Snapchat group chat, I think,
it's
of
titled.
our niece, who is young at the time.
Yeah, she's probably like 9, 8.
Which is a whole other thing. But it was called, they added Ava and Emmy into it.
Yeah,
and they were much older because they were like the cool cousins. And she named it. It was supposed to be named the Chatters, but she spelled it Chaters, so the Chaters. And so we just thought that was so funny. So we put the Chaters on the Guess Who board. Yeah. And then another person that's on the Guess Who board is a little girl that we met in the grocery store, a total stranger, but her parents were being really like over the top obnoxious with this little girl. And then our neighbor we ran into our neighbor who just became enamored with this little girl, and he randomly gave her $20.
That's a hard one to explain.
All of these are very hard to explain.
Yeah.
So,
they're all like kind of inside jokes, I guess.
Yes, they're all inside jokes, but they are all stories.
Super memorable.
And they're memorable because they're stories.
Yeah.
And so we're not really making fun of people. They're actually, most of these people are like legendary in our minds, and
it's like an homage.
It really is. It really is.
I mean, if you make the Guess Who board, it's like there's probably people put that like
you're iconic if you make it to
like
the
a top
Guess
10
Who board.
like lifetime achievement award sort of thing.
You make it to the Guess Who board, you're iconic.
Yeah.
Yes, because you have an iconic story attached with you.
Yeah.
And so anyway, our kids are going to die if that they,
Yeah.
we talked about this publicly, but we will never give up that note. It's under lock and key. We got that password protected.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're all taking it to our graves. But
so how does this tie into what we're talking about today?
So when I was thinking about, it came up in my head because Ava found this waiter on Instagram, and I started thinking about the Guess Who board, and I was thinking about what makes it so memorable. And they're all moments in time that are tied around a story. And I think about that grocery store trip, which we would never have remembered had there not been a story around this grocery store trip. And now that grocery store trip will live on forever in the brains of, you weren't there, but it was me and the kids. That time we went out to dinner with this particular waiter, we would never remember had it not been for this waiter that was so funny and larger than life. And this group chat would never be memorable had it not been for this funny name. And then there were some funny interactions in there. And it is always going back to the story. Stories make everything so memorable. And so as we move into the holiday season and people are more willing to pull out their wallets and they're more spend happy. As business owners, as people who have something to sell, we are much more likely to default to selling with specs, meaning we are going to default to, it's just this price. It used to be this price, but now it's this price, and lean and buy this. And, this is the feature and focus on this. And we do that because it's an easier sell and we don't have to work as hard for the sale. And I get that and I understand that. However, what we want to remember is this isn't a one-night stand in a sales conversation. We want the sale and holiday. However, we want it long-term. We really want to be creating customers that are going to come back to us in 6 and for the rest of that year and beyond. And so in order to do that, we need to be memorable. We need to stand out above the noise in this infomercial world that we live in the holiday season. And the way we do that is through telling stories.
Yeah. And I think, one more thing to point out on that, I feel like a lot of people convince themselves that they want to provide an easy, transactional, quick sort of experience for users and buyers. And they think in terms of that, well, if I'm just telling you, like, here's what you get, it's a 30% discount. Black Friday is the one that we all talk about that all the time. That's coming up. It's right around the corner. You'll be inundated as a consumer of whatever it is you're consuming with all of these, 40% discounts, 50% off, buy one, get one, whatever it is. Those are all super transactional, right? And if my sort of knee-jerk reaction to that whole transactional space is if you commoditize your business, like the industry in a large part will try to commoditize things. If you are helping the industry, it's going to go much quicker, right? Like you have to stand out. There has to be a reason somebody would pay a premium for you. There has to be a reason that somebody would choose your service. There has to be something behind it that connects somebody emotionally to what it is that you're doing or offering. And trying to make it easy via a transactional sort of message just isn't it,
What do you mean when you say making it easier on the industry?
I think we as consumers, because everyone is a consumer as well as a seller, right? So as consumers, we see all of these ads where we're just like, 40% off. I got to get to Target at 3 a.m. when the doors open. Like there's all of these, like, there's all this buzz generated around these like massive deals. Even when we watch the Today Show in the morning or whatever it is, they start talking about these leading up to it. So it's an easy sort of trap to fall into, to think that I have to match that same sort of messaging and that same, format and template because that's where the industry is going. And if somebody's going to get 40% off of a new TV at Target, then I should be offering 40% off of my, professional services as a online business person, or it should be that message that I'm leading with, right? And all we're saying is it shouldn't be that message you're leading with, right? It should be the story, the reasoning. It should be something that connects with someone on an emotional level before you get to that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So give us an example. Do you have an idea? Like,
yeah. So let's say you're a photographer. So I think we have a lot of product-based business owners for sure in our audience, but we also have a lot of service-based business owners. So let's say you're a photographer, and I think, to your point, you don't have to compete on price for sure. However, this is a time of year that if you want to either offer a discount or offer some sort of incentive or bonus, it is a great time of year to do so. You can build revenue by doing so. So I'm not saying you don't need to jump on board with the sales. If you're not going to do that, you shouldn't expect like an uptick in your sales. You might just expect regular amount of sales, which is great. If you want an uptick, I do think you need to do something. It doesn't have to be a discount. It can be an add-on. It can be a pre-selling for something else. Like you need to create some buzz. However, what I am saying is when you create the buzz, don't lead with the offer, lead with the story.
Right.
And so if you're a photographer and let's say you are offering, maybe 15% off your packages that are booked this week, and and then you have to paid for this week and you have to book them in the next 90 days or whatever. Maybe you're a wedding photographer. You can tell a story and make it really emotional and think about a client. So if you're a wedding photographer, you could start with something like, I climbed up to the top of the trail at right before sunset, and I was hiding right behind the tree line, waiting for Jeremy and Lydia, knowing what was about to happen. I could feel my heart beating, so I could only imagine what was happening with Jeremy's heart, knowing that he was about to pop the question and ask the woman that he was in love with to spend the rest of her life with him. And as I heard their footsteps crunch up the trail, I knew this was the moment. And Jeremy had entrusted me with this wrinkle in time that was going to be passed on to their children one day, and maybe one day their grandchildren. And I felt so honored to have that privilege. And as I saw Jeremy bend down on one knee, I grabbed my camera and started clicking my shutter and then go on and describe what happened, right? And so you're just essentially setting the stage. And then you can kind of move into, when you book a session with me, it's more than just me capturing these images on film. Like, I am treating the moment you are entrusting with me with utmost reverence, because I know these aren't just moments on a digital screen for you. These are like a moment in time of your family, and I want to capture it and treat that moment with the reverence that it deserves. So you're giving that feeling, giving that moment to those people, and then you can move into, right now I'm offering 15% off.
Yeah, so you're not ignoring that. Mm-hmm. And I think it might be helpful to think of this. I always think of this in terms of like, if you remember back in the 80s when Guess Who was invented, right? Way long time ago. Sort of the way that businesses advertise for things were like in newspaper flyers, right? So the format, it didn't really lend itself to a storytelling environment. So it had to be flashy. It had to be like, save $100 on X, right? And then even as we went from that into more like sort of TV commercials are shorter. Most people aren't spending millions for that super long commercial to tell the story, right? What social media has done is given you a platform that's ideally suited for storytelling, right? Like, this is sort of the entire concept of the platform, right? Like, it's given to you, so take advantage of that. We know that as people, as humans, we want to hear stories. We want to have those emotional connections. It's not that, Radio Shack in the 80s didn't want that. It's that they didn't have a medium that was effective in communicating in that way, right? If Radio Shack had an opportunity to not put, a bunch of flyers in the Sunday newspaper, they probably would have explored it back in 1985, but they didn't,
Yeah.
That's the way I think of it.
Yeah,
least.
Absolutely. Yeah. With social media and with email marketing and, there's so many avenues that we can use.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the way of the platform is there. It lends itself to this sort of like rhythm, right? This cadence. And I think we've got to be smart and take advantage of that,
Absolutely. Yeah. Can you think of an example?
Well, I mean, think of it like a company that's doing it that way, or think of an example.
Think of another example of how to lead with a story.
Yeah, I think, it's funny, right? Because I was thinking about this too, and I was thinking about like, especially higher dollar items that are like really sort of the to me, the average consumer, the more expensive something gets, the more sort of, cost comparison you do as a consumer, right? And I was just thinking in terms of kitchen appliances. You remember that a couple years ago we redid the kitchen in our old house, like actually right before we moved. So yeah.
Helped it sell more quickly.
It did, yeah, I guess so, but we didn't get to enjoy it as much as we probably would have liked to, right? But so we've got you've got all sort of the big box retailers, and then we've got sort of this family owned, appliance shop. And we ended up going with a family owned appliance shop that's sort of been in our county for a very long time. The story here is I'm not exactly sure how much we paid more doing that route or how much we potentially even saved. I don't even really know.
We paid
right?
more. I know that.
Sure, we paid more, right? The point is, like, I remember the thing about, the key message here to me was like, this is a customer relationship. We own this business, right? So if you have something wrong with the product or you need help with the warranty, like, you call our number, right? It is a local area code. It's not an 800 number, right? It's not like, hey, I'm logging on to some random website who's this third-party provider of a plan through a big box retailer for, it was none of that stuff. It was the ease of use, the whole idea of I own this business. My family has owned this business for a long time. We'll take care of it, right? And I think in terms of that, if I had that space to compete in, I certainly would want to tell the story of, that's what makes me stand out in this business. That's sort of the message that I want everybody to take away.
Yeah. I think the good point to remember is when you're telling a story, especially around holiday time, figure out what feature you want to highlight and what brand value you want to highlight. What feeling do you want to highlight? So with the photographer, it really is this idea of capturing the moments that matter. What you're talking about is like a top-notch service, or maybe it's a family-owned business.
Yeah.
So what is it that you want to highlight and build the story around that?
Yeah, I think that's a great plan. I think another one that you mentioned earlier that is worth touching on here is, take those customer testimonials, right? What is it that people consistently tell you that they like about your product or service, right? That is a great way to start. If you're struggling for what story do I tell, where do I start this, sort of journey, that's a great place to get started.
And don't be afraid to actually tell the story. So with the photographer thing that I did, I was actually thinking of my cousin Jeremy and his new fiance Lydia. They sent me the pictures of them getting engaged on the top of a mountain and after a hike. So like, think of a great customer experience and tell a bit of a dramatic story. Don't make things up, but let it be visual, like paint the picture. That's what people connect with. Like help people put themselves in the story, picture themselves there in the moment. It can be that dramatic. I actually heard a great story, and I can't place where this was, but it started with, it really started with something like the sweat was dripping off my head and my hand like clutched around the trophy. The plate on the trophy said pickleball winners. And my wife grasped my hand and we couldn't believe it. After 2 years of working and being on the courts, we never thought we'd win this tournament, but we did. Retirement looks so different than we thought it would, but we've been able to enjoy ourselves because I'm going to butcher it, but it ended up being about money, and it went to like a retirement planner. But it started with like painting the picture of these two retired people like winning a pickleball tournament, and they've been able to enjoy their retirement and do fun things for themselves because they manage their money well. And this retirement planner helped them manage their money. But I got hooked in to something that normally I'm like, boring. I don't want to hear about it, because I was hooked into the story about like, oh, they won a pickleball tournament. That's interesting. Tell me more. And then all of a sudden I was reading about retirement planning. So like, especially if you're in an industry that's kind of boring, this is more important than ever for you.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing something fun and sexy, like photography, it's a little bit easier. But if it's a boring industry, storytelling is really, really important because people aren't paying attention. Appliances, yeah. So how can you make it fun? Stories let you do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the medium is there. It's just it's the the opportunity is there to take advantage of the platform that you have, and being strategic and smart about it is really helpful. It really propels you and really separates you from competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what else you got? What else do you want to talk about?
That's about it.
Good for me.
You were going to ask me if you had there about any objection.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about objections. I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
What about for people who say, like I just think in terms of, hey, here we are around the corner from Black Friday. People are only going to pay attention to the first 5 seconds of my story. I've got to lead with that because that's what they expect.
Got to lead with
the price cut and the deal and the specs, what you're getting. And yeah, the story is important. I believe in the story, but I've got to do this now, and then the story will come later.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So I think in marketing, in selling, you have to have repetitive messaging. And so you're not going to just create one piece of marketing. And I think when I say marketing and selling in this small business world particularly, they are many times one in the same. Like your marketing leads to sales. I think of email marketing a lot of times. So if I have 1 week to market my pop-up offer, I am not sending just one email. I'm going to send a series of them. So not every single email is going to be starting with the story, because I agree that would be a little bit over the top. If I'm that photographer, not every email is going to say, my feet were crunching on the leaves. And then the next day it was like, my hands were lapping in the ocean. Like, it's like, okay, we get it. And so you do have to consider there are a lot of different buyer types, and some buyer types are really going to connect with that. And I would argue as humans, we all on some level connect with that. And it is a noisy marketplace during the holidays specifically. And some people do just want the specs. You do need to pepper in marketing copy, sales copy that quickly shows people what is available for them. So you need a little bit of both. Stories, but what I see happening is people totally just X the stories in lieu of only the specs. And so I would say go 60-40 story specs this time of year, because you want that long-term customer. So you do need some just spec marketing copy, and you need a little bit of both, I would say.
Yeah, so I'll give you my quick 2 minutes on this. So I think most experienced marketers that I know, they always use that phrase, meet people where they are. Y'all have heard that, right? So it's essentially what you just said. Someone who's going to be looking for the deal needs to have a piece of material that appeals to them, right? But if I'm building my brand, I'm not necessarily building it and ignoring all of the brand building things by focusing just on the deal during that moment in time. The best example that I can give of this, and it's sort of really exactly the same answer that you just give, is car commercials. I love the car industry and the whole thing, right? So about late September, October-ish now is when most car manufacturers bring out their new next year models, right? So late September, October-ish, 2025, the car dealers are bringing in their 2026 models, right? It's not January 1 when they hit dealer lots. It's probably September, October, right? So if you think about Volvo, what is the one word that comes to mind when you think about Volvo? As far as like what sets them apart in the marketplace? Do you have an idea?
This is not my
Safety
thing.
is what I would say, right?
I was going to say reliability.
Reliability, yeah, okay. But if you look at all their commercials, right, like it's all safety. It's always, they have safety, 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 safety. They still have that commercial in the beginning of October that says, hey, that 20-second deal on the news that says, hey, we're out with our 2026s. We need to clear space on these lots, and you're going to get these year-end rebates. They still have that commercial for the cost-conscious, super cost-focused buyer, but it doesn't dominate everything. You'll still see the other commercial about safety an hour later, right? So it's just sort of that multi-layered messaging, and you can certainly have an offering that's specific to this flash deal sort of thing happening right now, but it doesn't change the overall brand building of who you are and the story you're telling.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that's the other thing you have to remember. You're going to have different buyer types, that people that are ready to buy and will respond to different messaging, but you're also going to have people, I always say the brand awareness pyramid, you're going to have people down at the bottom that are just not ready to buy. Those people are not going to buy this sales cycle.
Right.
And so those people are not going to respond to the specs, but they will respond to the storytelling and start to get have bought in, and then maybe in 3 months they
100%.
will respond because they'll be ready to buy then. And so if all you're doing is leading with the specs, those people you're going to lose them, and they will just leave the pyramid. They will leave the audience because you've lost them. They're just bored.
Yeah.
So the storytelling keeps the right people paying attention. It will move other people up to buyers right away. It will keep the right people paying attention until they are ready to become buyers.
Yep, totally.
Yeah. All right. So happy holiday selling. We can't wait to hear how it goes for you. Remember, stories over specs to include specs when you need them. Yeah.
But in general.
That's right. That's right. All right. We'll be back next week with some more She Sells, He Sells for you.